Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. In 2016, Michelle Wilson's life changed forever after a traumatic car accident left her convinced that she had entered a parallel universe. This is the strange story of a successful, vibrant woman who suddenly found herself isolated and defeated, thrust into a transformed world that had become cold and hostile overnight. Relationships with friends and family, once sources of comfort and warmth, had deteriorated without warning into toxicity and strife. Michelle Wilson, an energetic and enthusiastic woman in her late 30s, had always been admired by friends for her tenacity and lust for life. A single mother, Michelle managed to work, study, parent, and nurture a rich social circle with seeming ease. Michelle had a lifelong passion for the arts, and in her teens and 20s worked as a professional dancer and performance artist. Later in life, Michelle developed a thriving career painting commissioned works, while also renovating and reselling vintage caravans as a lucrative side business. In 2016, at age 39, Michelle decided to go back to school to pursue her dream of earning a fine arts degree. She enrolled full-time in an arts program at a local university. Michelle immersed herself in her studies and in just the first 6 months was earning top marks, frequently scoring in the 80 to 90% range on assignments. Outside of school, Michelle continued to nurture close friendships and parent her teenage daughter. The home she owned, a quaint bungalow on a quiet suburban street, was a frequent gathering place for Michelle and her friends and family. Michelle took pride in maintaining a comfortable, welcoming home. Michelle also placed a great deal of effort on staying active and healthy. Nearly every day she could be found taking brisk morning walks or bike rides through her seaside neighbourhood before heading to class. In the evenings, Michelle unwound from busy days by practicing yoga or attending dance classes. She felt this commitment to fitness and well-being contributed to her high energy levels and productivity. One warm and quiet Tuesday morning in April 2016, Michelle busied herself finishing renovations on a vintage caravan she planned to sell. It was parked on the wide roadside outside her home. Her partner Jim stood just inside the caravan, hands clasped around a warm mug of coffee, chatting idly with Michelle as she made final adjustments. In an instant, their lives changed forever. A speeding SUV came careening around the corner, swerving violently out of control. In a blink, the SUV crashed headlong into the vintage caravan at over 80 kilometres per hour. Michelle had no time to react before she felt her body crushed by the violent impact. Razor-sharp shards of splintered wood and metal seemed to instantly gouge her body from all sides. One large shard sliced through her ear, and in that moment she was certain it would pierce her skull and kill her. And then the movement stopped. Stunned, Michelle extracted herself from the crushed caravan and walked out onto the street. Jim also emerged, shaken but miraculously unharmed. As Michelle reached up to stem the trickle of blood running down her neck, people came rushing over, drawn by the sound of scraping metal and squealing tyres. Seeing the blood, a neighbour guided Michelle to sit while they waited for paramedics. The caravan was utterly demolished into a gnarled mess of metal and wood. Amazingly, neither Michelle nor Jim had suffered anything beyond minor cuts and bruising. Still, paramedics administered fentanyl for Michelle's pain and transported both to the hospital as a precaution. At the hospital, while awaiting x-rays, Michelle was able to view photos of the crash site that Jim had taken on his phone. She was stunned to see that the out-of-control SUV had not only demolished the caravan, but also ploughed through a brick wall and metal gate on her property, before coming to rest atop her own car parked behind the caravan. Both vehicles were total losses. Michelle marvelled at how she'd been able to simply walk away from the wreckage. By all accounts, she and Jim should not have survived such a catastrophic collision. Michelle's father called soon after seeing Jim's account of the crash on social media. Strangely, even after Jim assured him Michelle was not seriously injured, her father showed little concern. "Okay, good," was all he said before abruptly hanging up. Michelle was troubled by his callous reaction. It was an incredibly uncharacteristic response. He had always been deeply empathetic as a parent, some might even say overprotective. But she tried not to read too much into it. She believed the worst was behind her now, but in reality, her nightmare had only just begun. In the first weeks after the accident, Michelle started noticing subtle changes in how friends and family treated her. She initially brushed it off as people acting strange in the aftermath of her near-death experience. But the changes slowly amplified over time. The first stark indicator of change was her father's harsh, mocking tone. When she finally confronted him weeks later for not checking on her after the crash, he mimicked her in a cruel voice. "Oh, I'm a middle-aged woman, but I still want my mummy and daddy." This marked the beginning of many increasingly nasty exchanges. Seemingly overnight, Michelle's once loving father had become dismissive and belittling. Soon after, Michelle's brother cut all contact without explanation. He banned Michelle from seeing his daughter, her niece, with whom she'd previously had a close relationship. Her parents did nothing to stop the brother from cutting Michelle out of their lives, even defending the brother's decision. The environment at home was further poisoned by the brother's behaviour. He spoke to everyone with disdain, mirroring their father's relentless belittling and sarcasm. Michelle's mother also became wildly hostile, accusing Michelle of funny looks. If Michelle remained calm, she was accused of gaslighting. And if she showed any impatience or attempted to defend herself, she was branded a bully. Her mother would then give her the silent treatment until Michelle grovelled to an apology. When Michelle's mother fell ill with cancer, the news came to her not from her mother, but through a cousin. Despite the strange relationship and the emotional distance, Michelle devoted herself to her mother's care with tireless love and patience, buying her everything and driving her everywhere, helping in every way she needed during her surgeries, treatments and recovery. Yet as soon as her mother was well enough to care for herself, she ceased contact, returning to spend all her time with Michelle's brother, who had been absent throughout their mother's illness. Michelle's friends also began acting strangely. Lifelong friends started picking fights over trivial issues or accusing Michelle of outrageous falsehoods. One accused Michelle of assault and sought a restraining order. Another friend Michelle had introduced and matched with her now husband said she didn't want anything to do with her after the husband accused her of lying after she mentioned setting them up on a date, an event which according to them had never happened. One by one, Michelle's closest friends dropped away. A male friend of 25 years abruptly ended their relationship after sending Michelle a cruel email laden with false accusations about being a negligent parent. Michelle was baffled and heartbroken. Why were people she'd known for decades suddenly treating her with such contempt? What had she done to deserve this? In the months following the accident, these experiences began to weigh deeply on her psyche. The vibrant, tireless woman she had always felt herself to be now struggled to find even the faintest traces of energy and motivation. Once devoted to her artwork, Michelle now lost interest in painting. Her passion for dance faded. She isolated herself at home and neglected friendships, fearful that getting close to anyone might spur more rejection. Michelle's physical health also declined rapidly. She developed strange sudden illnesses like fibromyalgia and uterine prolapse that doctors suggested could be linked to the physical and mental trauma of the accident. Constant back and joint pain made exercise difficult. Michelle's depression deepened as her isolation increased. Michelle resumed university studies after the crash, but had struggled considerably compared to her previous performance. Harsh treatment from the art school head caused Michelle to withdraw from in-person classes entirely. In the midst of her long and difficult journey, Michelle found some solace in therapy, working diligently with a therapist she had been seeing for 8 years to navigate the complex maze of PTSD, depression, anxiety, and deep-seated abandonment issues. Yet in an unexpected turn, the therapeutic relationship that had been a cornerstone to her well-being shattered abruptly. During a session, Michelle corrected her therapist's spelling, an innocent act that was met with an inexplicable surge of anger. Accusing her of attempting to dominate the session and inflate her own ego, he abruptly terminated her therapy, refusing to see her ever again. After years of trust and progress, Michelle was left reeling from this sudden expulsion, feeling an acute sense of loss and betrayal that compounded her already heavy emotional burdens. Increasingly desperate to numb her psychological pain, Michelle turned to illicit drugs supplied by a friend. Her substance abuse provided temporary relief at first, but soon spiralled into full-blown addiction. 6 years on from the crash, Michelle had cycled through recovery and relapse multiple times. She lost over 20 kilos and had abandoned the active lifestyle that previously helped give her life purpose and meaning. Once a devoted mother, Michelle now also struggled to care for her teenage daughter while battling depression and addiction. Michelle's life had become unrecognisable. Although she had contemplated ending her life many times, she persevered for her daughter's sake. How could such a contented existence spiral so radically into a cold, hostile and unrelenting state of affairs, into a life that Michelle now felt like a stranger in? Researching online one day, Michelle stumbled upon theories about quantum immortality and parallel universes. The notion that she may have slipped into an alternate reality during the car crash instantly resonated. Michelle scoured forums and books, finding countless stories mirroring her own experience of a near death followed by subtle but pervasive changes in the personalities of loved ones. Friends, family, partners who suddenly lacked all warmth and compassion. Environments that once nourished them turned harsh and abusive. The more similar accounts to that of her own that Michelle read, the more certain she became. The accident had been her crossover point into a parallel world. The stable relationships she once knew with family and friends were lost forever. Try as she might to reconnect, the people she'd known intimately were now essentially strangers wearing familiar faces. Perhaps they now opposed and repelled her, sensing that she wasn't their true Michelle. No matter how radically her own behaviour shifted to accommodate them, it only seemed to push them further away. Michelle wondered if she was fundamentally incompatible with the relationships of this world. The dutiful, optimistic traits that had won her praise before now made her a target here. 7 years on, Michelle continues adjusting to her new solitary existence. She takes comfort knowing her story is not unique, that others who've shifted have shared her painful journey. Michelle holds on to hope that one day a doorway between worlds may reopen, if not to return her home, then at least to a place where she belongs and is cared for. For now, Michelle endures as a quiet outsider in a foreign world. She lives each day in solemn anticipation, listening for the signs of her own reality calling her back.